Hello, Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some even more exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
As you know, Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast. All patrons get early access to new CutOff Jeans episodes before they're released to the public.
But the most exciting new perk is that all of our patrons will be able to listen to an exclusive bonus episode of the podcast every other week. Topics include personal stories that I'm not ready to share publicly, conversations with family and friends.
And sometimes we'll devote an entire episode to other subjects we love, like musical theater or classic television.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Jeans podcast, and it would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/cutoffjeanspodcast.
Thank you so much, my Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. Happy Boxing Day, everyone. It's me, Jules. I'm all alone. Well, I'm in my dining room. My family is back playing video games. I wanted to release episode 2, a rerun of episode 2, for you guys as a little bonus before we start season 7. And I know it's a day late, but it was Christmas yesterday. So I want to make a couple corrections. Keep in mind, this was 4 years ago, and things have changed since then. So I re-listened to the episode, and there are a couple of things that I can now clarify. I spent a lot of time talking about the Golden State Killer and how all that went down. And at the time, the genetic genealogist who basically broke the case was choosing to remain anonymous because she didn't know what was going to happen. She has since come forward and written a book. Her name is Barbara Ray Venter. I think she's in the group, actually. But that is who essentially is responsible for solving the Golden State Killer case. What else do I have? The rules on GEDmatch have changed as far as law enforcement visibility. Now you need to opt in or opt out of being visible to law enforcement. GEDmatch has also changed ownership over the years as well, and it's kind of different, but it's still the most used database. That's my daughter screaming, playing a video game. Things have changed with the opting in and opting out on GEDmatch. It's still controversial. I still am of the belief that it's a great use of DNA to find bad people, but you know, that's me. The term mirror trees is no longer used. Apparently it's passé, but the principle still applies. I think the main reason it's not used is because they're not separate trees anymore, but separate branches on trees, and there's a specific way to do it. And I call them research trees. And the reason they were called mirror trees is because they started out as a copy of somebody else's tree, and then you built it out from there. But it's a research tree. We don't like mirror trees. We don't like the term mirror trees anymore. The leaf hints on Ancestry, Renee refers to as a shaky leaves. The leaves on Ancestry are no longer shaky. Things happen over 4 years. A listener question came from Deirdre Nesline. She happens to be my husband's cousin, who since then we've actually become very good friends, and we communicate quite a bit and have lunch when she is in the area. The word of the week was centimorgan. Oh, during my explanation of what a centimorgan is, I used the word chromosome. That's neither here nor there. I just misspoke. Anyway, we will be back in the new year with the brand new season of actual new episodes. If you would like to keep listening to these classic episodes, listening to my story, you can join Patreon because I'm going to be reissuing those podcasts on the Patreon platform for either $5 or $10 a month. Patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast. I think that's what it is. I'm so tired. Christmas was exhausting this year, guys. How about you? All right. So that is all I'm going to say today. I'm going to release this. I hope you guys enjoy it for those of you who haven't heard these early episodes. This one, of course, is featuring my original co-host, Renee. And next week on the Patreon free episode, I recently spoke to Renee. We had a little conversation, and you guys can hear what she has been up to. Okay. Go ahead and enjoy episode 2, which was called Diving into the Thing. Something like that. Okay. Happy holidays. The truth is in your jeans. Hello and welcome to Cut Off Jeans, the podcast about uncovering the truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist.
I'm Renee Colvert, and I am a professional question asker.
And engineering and keeping us on track today is the inimitable, that's a good word, Richard Castle.
I'm a professional. What am I a professional of? I don't know. I'm
All
a
the
professional
things.
songwriter.
Yes.
Nothing about DNA, but I love genes and chromosomes. And so go to it. Let's hear it.
We're going to it.
Phew, I'm glad we
do
got
it.
permission. Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting here waiting.
I think every week we need to find out if the floor is open for questions from Rich.
Good idea.
All right. Hey, how was your week?
it was good.
Yeah?
You know what I did for the first time?
What'd you do?
I did sensory deprivation. Have you ever done that to yourself?
Yeah, not on purpose,
yeah.
I don't think.
So it's clearly a gimmick. I think it's a new gimmick that's happening to allow people
So what
to
senses
relax.
did you deprive yourself of?
Right? So sight. So it's what's happening now. It's a pod that you put yourself in, and it's filled with 1,300 pounds of salt and water. So you just float in a sensory deprivation tank.
Renee, I'm having anxiety just listening to you right now.
That's completely fair.
I can't.
I have a question about
Yes.
that, Renee. Do you remember the movie Altered States? Maybe I am showing my age, but it was William Hurt, and he went into a sensory deprivation tank
Right.
and came out a monster.
Oh no, you guys! This
I'm a little
podcast
scared now. I'm a little
is about to
scared.
get real interesting.
Okay. All right. Maybe we should talk about genetic genealogy.
Great,
you
let's do
think?
it. Let's get it. Yes, actually, let's move on to the whole reason our listeners
Okay.
came to this podcast.
That's right. All right. So we, as I alluded to last week, we are going to talk about GEDmatch and the capture of the Golden State Killer.
Listen, I don't think there is a topic that's more hot right now. I will say though, and I think that this has brought in a bunch of people who don't even I'm not a real big caring about murder person, but
Oh,
this
you're not?
is fascinating.
You're not
I
Renee?
know.
Not so much about
But as
the
a
murder?
rule, I think as society, we love a murder mystery.
We love a murder mystery.
I don't, but this one brought
But we
me
love
in.
solving it.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I love solving it. Okay, so the beauty of this whole thing is that genetic genealogy is actually what broke the case wide open, and that's what solved it.
Incredible.
Here goes. This weekend, I spoke to my friend Cece Moore, who is a genetic genealogist. She's the genetic genealogist from Finding Your Roots with Dr. Henry
very
Louis
cool.
Gates, and she's
Okay.
also on any 2020 Dateline 48 Hours. She's always the genetic genealogist.
She's the girl
that is
explaining
there
it.
to
Okay.
talk about the foundlings and all that stuff. Anyway, and so I spoke to her because she kind of has the inside. And I also spoke to Leah LaPearl Larkin, who's another genetic genealogist. Both of them are part of, Cece founded something called DNA Detectives, which is
Yes.
the group that I learned how to do this from. And they help people find their people.
You went straight to the top.
I went
with
straight to the
experts.
top. Well,
Okay.
that's the way to do it, So here's what I got from them.
Yes.
As much as I can tell. All right. So everybody's giving this detective Paul Holes all the kudos for doing this. And granted, he has been on the trail of this guy for years.
Right.
So the Golden State Killer is, if you live under a rock, is
Fair.
Yeah. He is a prolific serial killer that began in the 70s in Northern California, just outside Sacramento. And he started with just rapes and tortures. And then it stopped for a while. Then it moved to the Ventura area. And then and he started killing people and couples and what have you. And he, the last double murder he committed was, I think, in 1986.
Oh, wow. Okay. And we've been on the hunt for him
and
ever
we have
since.
been looking for him, and his DNA has been in CODIS, but there has never been a hit. And it's, and of course, everybody knows Michelle McNamara wrote a book about it.
Right.
And this Paul Holtz, he started... I don't know what gave him the idea, but he noticed amazing things were happening in genetic genealogy. So he contacted some genetic genealogists and said, "What can we do using, this
this
database
new
or these databases
yeah.
for this technology?" Thank you, Renee.
You got it.
So they tried something, and the last DNA sample was collected, I think, in 1986, and this particular pathologist did a rape kit on the female victim, obviously. And for some reason, he did a duplicate rape kit as well. So there were 2 rape kits. One was put in cold storage, and the other one was put into CODIS.
Interesting. Okay.
So they realized, and they didn't find out until recently, that this absolutely pristine rape kit still existed.
Was around. So,
Yes.
forgive me. Okay, cold storage, that makes sense to me. What was the second word you said? What is
CODIS.
that? What is that?
CODIS is the Combined DNA Index System, which is basically
sure.
I
Okay.
think it's a national DNA database.
Kind of like a white pages, but for DNA, where you can find people?
Sure. Yes, Renee.
I mean, a lot more complex than that.
little more
but sure,
than
if that
the
makes
white
sense to
pages?
you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they got a hold of this DNA from this kid, Mr. Holtz, and the genetic genealogists. The genetic genealogist that actually solved this has not come forward and wants to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
So, which kind of sucks for genetic genealogists because she or he won't speak.
Right.
It's not really getting out there that it's actually a genealogist or a genetic genealogist
Oh, yeah.
that did this.
No, that would
Anyway.
be unfortunate. But I wonder if it's like a family member or something.
No,
Somebody- okay,
of
sure.
who?
Of the Golden State Killer.
Well, it was a family member that got him caught.
Very exciting. Okay,
Because
all right,
it's
but we're
genetics.
jumping
All right,
ahead.
so
okay,
they
yes.
got this pristine 40-year-old sample from the rape kit, and they extracted the DNA from that sample using a computer program to create a file like the kind that are used in genetic genealogy.
Great.
So they somehow extracted this DNA and uploaded it into the GEDmatch database.
Cool.
Which is a public database.
Right.
And anyone whose DNA is in there is open to be matched with somebody else.
Okay.
And as adoptees per se, that's how we find people. We just put our data in there, and all of a sudden I got a first cousin once removed, and I solved my story in a matter of weeks.
Incredible. Okay.
Right. So
his DNA is
all right.
in there.
So his DNA is in there.
Okay.
And it takes about 24 hours. And the closest matches they got were third cousins,
Okay.
which is not super close. It can be done, though, obviously. You'd prefer a second or closer
Sure.
in looking for family. But in this case, so the point of this is third cousins theoretically mean that they share second great-grandparents.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So it's
Yes,
still
that
pretty
makes you a
distant.
third cousin.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And by building what we call mirror trees off of these matches,
Okay.
all the way back to their second great-grandparents. And by the way, every individual has 16 second great-grandparents. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. No, I did the math. Got it. That makes sense.
Very well done.
Thank you. Go up, go up, go up,
and-
go up. 16.
Right.
Okay.
So you do, and you have to do this by traditional research, basically, in doing people's mirror trees.
Right.
And then you build it up and down and out because you want to get all the cousins and all the siblings and then down. And so imagine you get all the way down to this generation or the generation of the Golden State Killer.
Right.
And then they start canceling people out.
Each one of those
women.
people.
It wasn't a woman. Clearly wasn't a woman. And this person's not the right age. This person, blah blah blah. This person was already dead. This person lived on the East Coast. So they,
Wow.
and they so tirelessly just started
Weeding
canceling
out
people out,
folks.
weeding them out, until they were down to about 5 possibilities.
Holy cow.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's when they started looking at those 5 possibilities.
Of course, yeah.
And they tailed them.
I have a question, Julie.
Yes, Rich.
Does this mean that our genes are like snitches? Because honestly, that somebody could go and find the DNA that is like a long distant relative of someone who was a criminal. Yeah. Does that mean like I had my hand in the cookie jar and then they could swab the cookie jar and then, my third cousin could put me in prison?
Well, if you killed somebody, Rich, yes.
I do a lot more for a good cookie.
Yeah, listen, he's not wrong, frankly. That's priorities are straight.
Well, yeah,
right there.
and that's actually a good question because there have been ethical questions regarding this.
It is a curiosity.
Yes,
Yeah, to be
well,
like, oh,
GenMatch has had to. They've put a disclaimer on the site saying, we figure you already knew this, but just so you know, anyone can access this database and anyone can access
can find
the
you.
DNA. Although, nobody can extract the DNA from it, but they can get matches
Right.
to
They
DNA.
can start tailing you.
Right. And they've also started showing people how they can remove their DNA if they want to. To me, that's like, well, so I guess you killed somebody.
There's not a lot of good
Or they're
reasons to be like,
protecting
get it
someone
out
who
of
killed
there.
somebody. I don't know. But if you have nothing to hide, I don't see the problem.
Agreed.
That's me.
I think it's
personally.
a case-by-case basis.
It is a case-by-case basis. And there's really no danger, at least right now, of that happening at 23andMe and Ancestry because Ancestry and 23andMe don't take uploads from outside. You have to give them a whole lot of spit, as you discovered last week. Yeah.
So much.
And they didn't have a whole lot of this guy's spit, so they couldn't have used any of those databases.
Right.
So.
Okay, so to
All right.
go back to
All
it.
right,
So
we're
they're
going back. So they started tailing the
5
guys.
Okay.
All right. So they're tailing this guy, and he started looking good to them. One day they followed him to about his day, and after he left where he was, they swiped something that he had used or eaten from or drank from.
Interesting.
whatever.
But that part is still a little mystery. They say...
We don't know exactly
Okay.
what it was, but we know they swiped his DNA from something that
Okay.
he used.
All right.
And so they had this DNA, then they put that DNA into CODIS that had the old sample, and boom, they got a hit.
And it's 100% match,
100%,
right?
100% match.
Yeah, there's not a lot of arguing there.
No.
Crazy.
Unless he has an identical twin.
Right. Sure. Yes.
That is actually a thing.
A possibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think
But
he does. I
doesn't.
think we'd
Well,
know by
Then
now.
we go back to birth records and be like, no, you
Yeah.
did this alone. But
They would know by now, I think, if
Okay.
he had an identical twin.
that is incredible.
And that's so basically the Joseph D'Angelo, the alleged Golden State Killer, was caught by a genetic genealogist.
third
I'm having
cousin.
such a trouble saying genetic genealogy, which is such a problem because it's what I'm going to say the most ever.
I mean, we might want to work on that a bit, but it's also
Why
a
is it a
difficult
tongue
word.
twister all of a
Genetic
sudden? for me?
genealogist
Genetic.
is hard.
Oh, Rich.
I think we should just call you Genie, like I Dream of Genie. Say,
the
I'm a
light brown
genie,
hair.
a professional genie.
They do say that. I'm a genealogist, but it has to be genetic. I'm a genetic genie.
Truly incredible. So with the third cousin, they were able to
Right.
knock
and
this out.
most of us don't know our third cousins
Oh,
anyway,
no.
so it's not like they're going to feel that bad about,
Right.
although they're probably all like, oh.
That is absolutely
And
incredible.
they may not even know still
Right.
because their DNA obviously is in there, but they may have not
That's
done a tree or
amazing.
what have you.
So
Right. Mm-hmm.
now the third cousins, were they in there because they had done like an ancestry or 20?
Yep. Right.
This is so good.
And it's happening
Yeah.
more and more, gang.
Yeah.
And,
boy.
that's a good thing. I'm
gonna
wondering
catch
if there's
everyone.
going to be, well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'd like to think so. I think it's a huge breakthrough, frankly.
Oh, man.
And a good one. We can talk about, we can continue to talk about the ethics of it. But, yeah, I
Do you
like
have
it.
any final thoughts on this?
Nope.
Okay.
All right. Do you have any questions about it?
I know you
Anything
explained
else?
it so thoroughly because
Good.
I had understood how they got his DNA, but I didn't know
Originally?
how they knew that it was going to be a match. So that really helped explain it quite a bit, or how they tracked down to start following him. So you answered all those questions.
And it's something that took months and months, obviously, and it's a lot of, and that's what we do. What genetic genealogists do is we just build what's called mirror trees, which are, let's see if this matches and if this fits, and then you put it in a database, and if somebody else matches with, we're back to the leaf hints again.
Incredible.
That's how they work, and that's how you find people.
I love it. All right, great reporting.
Thanks. All right. So I'm very proud of the genetic genealogy community. And on that note, we're going to take a break.
You are listening to CutOff Genes. And now back to Julie Dixon-Jackson and Renee Colvert.
And we're back.
We're back.
Okay. Remember last week how we collected your DNA?
I do, Julie.
It was fun, wasn't
yes.
it? Now, did you register your kit?
I did. I'm registered.
Good.
I got emails saying, "Hey, we've received it."
Very nice.
Hold
they've
on.
received it? Okay.
I got to receive.
Ooh, you need to let me know when it goes into processing.
Okay.
So we can get the average.
I will forward you that
processing time.
email. Yes.
Okay. And what something else we did after we recorded last week, I asked you your parents' names,
Right.
and their birth dates,
Yes.
and your grandparents' names and their birth dates and approximate locations.
Right. Yes.
Right.
And I remembered none of it, but I was able to look it all up.
Yes, you texted it all to me.
Thank you. Yes.
So I spent the week working on this.
Whoa.
And it wasn't the whole week, and I want you to look at
Julie.
this.
All right, so let's, just so your listeners know,
We'll
you
take a picture
have
of it.
unscrolled, and it is a scroll, an entire tree that looks like a rainbow.
Yes.
And it looks like, okay, so that's my Nana.
Right.
2, 3, 4. So it goes back 4?
It goes back to third great grandparents.
Oh my God, Julie.
And there are 32 of those, Renee.
Look at you.
Yep. So, and there's only one that I couldn't get, and I got half of another one.
Oh my God, this is incredible.
But this was in a week. Now, disclaimer: I didn't. I did all of this just using Ancestry and just using the hints.
Okay.
And so it's not well researched at all, but it's probably pretty close.
I think so. Yeah.
So I just wanted to demonstrate, if you really know how to use Ancestry, how quickly you can get to things.
Go all the way back that way.
Right.
So what the dates that we're looking at here is 1817. That's how far back you're going.
That's how
with
far back
just
I'm going.
families' names. That's insane. So, okay. So can you walk us through the process a little bit of where you had
All right.
all the way to my grandparents' names.
I had all the way to your grandparents.
Right.
And then
all the way
I
back
sat
to my
there, and then I
grandparents.
walked away for a few minutes.
Okay.
And then I came back and I clicked on them again, and they all had these little shaky leaves on them.
Interesting.
So I clicked on them one at a time.
Okay.
And the first thing I clicked on, and I don't recommend people just do this willy-nilly.
Okay.
But, it's a really good guideline. It's a
Right.
good placeholder,
Right.
I like to call it. They have other people's trees. And you click on that, and you can look at the trees, and you choose which trees you want to take information from. And then it'll compare with your tree.
Okay.
And then you can decide if that sounds feasible or not.
Wow.
And so then you get who their parents were and who their siblings were. And that goes into your tree, and so on and so on and so on. And then you get other hints. Once you put them in your tree, you get other hints. Like all of a sudden you might get their birth records or their divorce records.
So, okay, when you
Yep.
see a shaky leaf and you're just
Yes.
getting started,
Yes.
what are some indicators of like, oh, this is probably the relative? Is it they were in the same state?
If the birth dates are approximately the same, I mean, you really have to look at, make
Yeah.
sure they were in an approximate area
Okay.
close to it.
Right.
But even more than that, I mean, you really have to look at, like, a lot of people have nicknames instead of the real names.
So, okay, in this, did you find how much money is owed to me? Do I have money
did
or
not.
fame coming
I have
my
not
way?
gotten that far,
Okay,
Renee.
all
As I
right.
told you, I only had a week. And but there were lots of interesting things that I haven't even had a chance to look at. There's lots of pictures that I can put in. And what is not here,
Yeah.
that is much more impressive looking, but I can't put it on a piece of paper, is the actual entire tree with all cousins and aunts and uncles, like everybody's siblings.
Right.
It's huge.
This is absolutely, because you know what's so interesting for me is that I have an insanely small family from my perspective. Because my
Yeah,
dad
your
was an
immediate
only
family's
child.
small, right.
Right. And then my mom had one sister, they had one kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally, according to me, have one first cousin. One aunt, one uncle, one first cousin.
Well, you have
now, look at me.
you have a crud load of second cousins.
Look at Really?
I made it clean.
This is amazing. Good job. Great
A
work.
crud load. Oh, good.
And for the bad news, they're all criminals. We found out through the DNA.
On Jet Match.
Yeah. They're all serial killers, and I think one is
that's
wanted
fair.
in about 25
All right.
states.
I'm going to have to serve time on their behalf.
Okay, and on that note, here's something else. What I have discovered in every single family, including my own, and more than one, that I have worked on, is that there is murder, suicide in almost every family.
Oof, that's insane.
There's 2 in mine.
Wow.
Actually, and there's also mutiny. I'll get to that another
Okay,
time.
yeah.
It's a
We'll
good
definitely
one.
circle back
Yep,
around on that.
yep.
All right. Well, this
So
is amazing.
This
I'm
is the
excited
start of
to
this.
learn
I'm going
more.
to go back. I'm going to look at. I'm going to start really looking at each line. I couldn't go all the way back on Cummings. Was it Cummings? Was that
It
the
was
line?
Cummings. Yeah, that's my my
Is that
mom's
this
side of the family.
Is that? No.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you did great.
I couldn't find. I don't know what happened with Roy. With no, what's his name?
Right.
I'm
Looks
looking.
like
It's
there was
upside down.
a
What does
Michael
that say?
Roy?
Yes, Michael Roy
Okay.
Cummings. That's your second great grandfather.
Looky there.
And he was with his wife Estella for long enough to have 2 kids.
Okay.
They're in the census. They're in the 1880 census together.
What?
So they got married
Okay.
right before that. By the time the 1890 census came around,
Right.
she was back living with her parents with her 2 kids.
Whoa.
And he was never seen again.
Michael, where'd you go?
Well, I found death records for somebody with the same name and birth date in California. I don't know whether he abandoned the family because in the 1890 census, it said she was married, but she was
Right.
living with her parents. And in the 1900 census, it said she was widowed.
Look at that.
But people make that up.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Yeah,
how
it's less shameful
often,
to be widowed than...
And this is a completely separate subject, but I'm curious how often ego and pride will change your tree. You're like, oh, that's not at all what happened.
Constantly.
Yeah, I bet.
Constantly.
I bet. What else do you have for me?
I've got a question. I asked people on our Facebook page, the CutOff Jeans podcast page
Yeah, where can people find that if they want to become part of this?
on Facebook.
Okay. Great. Julie, what
just
should they
type
put in
in-
the search bar? Help them out.
Type in CutOff Jeans podcast, and boom, it should get you there.
Perfect. And then cut off is one word.
CutOff is one word.
Right.
I capitalize the O just to really emphasize off.
Sure.
Sure.
I like that.
That's
okay.
what you do.
So this is a question that came in on the Facebook page.
This
Cut
came
off
in.
jeans.
I said, hey, anyone got any questions? Because I love answering questions. So here's one from Deirdre Nesline. I'm curious as to the role a male lineage produces in females, because I was recently told that the males in the family always have a different ancestry than their female siblings.
Okay.
And she said, P.S. I'm very tired, so hopefully when I read this tomorrow, it will still make sense and I won't smack my head.
Does that make sense
Well
to you?
done, Deirdre. It does, actually. She's heard that men and women have, I think what she meant was different DNA. And indeed, that's true because of that illustrious Y chromosome that women don't have.
Right.
So they don't have different genealogy, especially if they're siblings with the same parents. If they share the same parents, they have identical genealogy.
Okay.
What they, it's sometimes a little more helpful in doing research or in doing genealogy to be able to research the male, because once again, that Y chromosome goes from male to male to male to male.
Right.
And establishes a name.
Yeah.
I
That
mean,
makes sense.
Theoretically,
Right.
it doesn't always. That's when NPEs come up, which is non-parental events. We all have a lot of those in our trees too, folks.
So is the answer to this question yes?
Answer of this question is their genealogy is not different. She may also be wondering if it's because, okay, if say your brother took a DNA test at the same time you did, or any time,
Right.
and yours came back 35% Western European, which is like German, and 30% Irish and Scottish and part British. And his came back 10% Western European and blah, 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 even though you have the exact same parents.
Right.
So we both inherit 50% of our DNA from each of our parents.
Okay.
It's split almost down the middle.
Great.
However, what we inherit from them is completely random.
Isn't that crazy?
So you got more German and he got more
That's
whatever
amazing.
I said. Yes.
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
that's why people go, wait a minute, how come you wait?
Look at that. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
That's why it's also very important for as many siblings as possible if you're doing genetic
Right, to see
genealogy
how many
to
we
test
can
so
get.
that you can really,
Right.
And once you get past third cousins, by the way, you have a pretty good chance of matching every second cousin that tests. Once you get to third cousins or second cousin twice removed, 10% of your third cousins will not share DNA. And once you get to fourth cousins and beyond, 50% will not share DNA. So once you get beyond that,
That's very
it
cool.
gets harder. So it helps, but they might match your sibling because they got that DNA.
Right.
But you didn't.
Ooh, I love it.
Yes.
Man, that's amazing.
Yes.
Okay, I like it.
So that's the story there.
All right.
I think was that clear?
It was super clear. I
All right.
love it.
Okay.
Julie, do you have a word of the day
I do have a word of the
or a
day.
word of the week?
Yeah, word of the day might be too much for everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. So take it easy on me. I need to take it slow.
Yeah.
What's your word of the week?
The word of the week is, and I kind of hinted about this last week, it happens to be my favorite word that sounds like it's made up. Centimorgan. Okay. Centimorgan, or the abbreviation is lowercase c, uppercase m.
Okay.
So that you know it's not centimeter.
Okay,
Hello.
smart, yeah.
Is a unit for measuring genetic linkage. It is defined as the distance between chromosome positions, for which the expected average number of intervening chromosomal crossovers in a single generation is 0.01. I don't know what that last part means.
I don't
guys.
know what all of that means.
Well, the other part means how many, basically a chromosome is a measurement, and how many chromosomes you match with somebody else determines how closely related
Got
you
it.
are to them.
Okay.
Okay, so Ancestry DNA and GEDmatch and FTDNA all use centimorgans. 23andMe uses percentages,
Okay.
which for me is less user-friendly because I can't visualize percentages like I can visualize centimorgans.
Right.
Anyway, so if there's a place on Ancestry DNA where you click where it says, we think that you're a third cousin with this
Right.
person or a fourth to sixth cousin, it doesn't say exactly what you are because it could be various things. Second cousin once removed, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And there's a place where there's a little eye, and you click on that, and a little pop-up comes up and says how many centimorgans you share on how many segments. And if you have, say, 30 centimorgans you share with somebody,
Okay.
they're a match, but they're a pretty distant match.
Okay.
They're anyone from a third cousin once removed to way out there.
Okay.
So the higher amount, the closer you are.
closer you are in
For
proximity.
example, my half-brother, my biological half-brother, matches me at about 1,400 centimorgans.
Look at that. Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
Well, yeah, it's a lot. However, it could be... Here's the thing. So he's a half-sibling, but that amount of DNA could also be an aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew, or a grandparent, or a double first cousin. We'll talk another
Okay.
time what a double
All right.
first cousin means.
Here's how I'm doing it.
Yes.
Is that, do you remember in elementary school when you would have to sell things, and if you sold a certain number, you'd get a certain prize? So
Yeah.
now I am like, oh, if you have this many centimorgans, you can win an uncle, a niece,
Yes.
a half brother.
Yes.
Okay, I got
love that. The more centimorgans, the better.
it. Got it. Very cool.
Okay.
This is
Yes.
so fascinating.
Yep. So, parent and child share an average of 3,600 centimorgans, which is half of all your DNA, basically. And that is centimorgan, and it's a fun word, and I still think it sounds made up, which it obviously is because it hasn't always been around. But all right, I think any questions, anyone?
Questions?
anyone?
Not
Yes.
for this episode,
Oh,
but
yep.
in a further episode or a
Yes.
future one.
Yes.
Can you explain exactly what a second cousin once removed is? What a third cousin is?
I
Like
will.
how you get there?
I
Okay,
will.
great.
I'm going to give you a hint. It's generational.
That does
So the
help.
difference
Okay.
between a second cousin and a first cousin once removed has to do with what, how far apart the generations of the two individuals are.
look forward
but
to
I'll
that
explain it
down the
maybe
road.
next week.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Hey, let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Genes, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon Jackson with Renee Colvert.
And we're back.
We're back.
All right. You know what time it is?
Story time?
Story time.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the show.
You got your banky?
I don't have my banky or snacks.
And your
I'm
binky?
more upset about snacks.
You need a bank. Oh, yeah. That's
Okay.
true. All right. Okay. So when last we spoke,
Yes.
when we left off, I was at the social worker's office in San Francisco. It was actually Oakland, because I went back and looked.
Right.
And she insisted on analyzing my psychiatric fitness before I could look at
Yes.
who I was.
Which is healthy. That's smart. That's
Sure.
responsible.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So she was pretty like, so what do you think? I don't even remember the questions she asked, but I was like, I'm fine. I'm good.
I'm fine.
good.
Whatever.
I've been waiting a long
what
time
is
for
the
this.
answer that lets you let me do this?
Right.
Yes.
Right. So finally, she gave me the go ahead to rip open this envelope.
Okay.
And there were about 7 photocopies of various different things like questionnaires, weight graphs, nursing reports, stuff like that. And there was also this one piece of paper that actually I have the actual
Wow,
piece
you
of
have
paper
it right there.
right here.
Look at that.
Now I wasn't sure at the time whether I would just get statistics and what have you. I didn't know if I would get identifying information.
Right.
But I got identifying
Yeah, you
information.
did. Yeah.
So, the very top of this paper, I'm going to look at it and explain it to you. There's a number 2570 that seems to be on all the papers, so apparently that was my number. So, it says, and I'm going to use pseudonyms for the last names just to protect the innocent.
Okay.
Or, whatever, in the interest of privacy.
Okay.
They're innocent already. Okay, so I'm going to say the last name is Priest.
Okay.
Okay. It says Priest. Nope. It says Priest.
Right.
Katrina Ellen.
Right.
That's my name.
Look at that. That's you.
All of a sudden, I had a name. She had named me.
It wasn't Julie.
It wasn't Julie.
Katrina.
It wasn't Julie Lisa Dixon.
How did that feel when you first saw that?
Weird.
I bet.
Super
Yeah.
duper weird. But really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it says born, and that has my birth date on it. I'm not going to say it, even though I think I said it on the last one, but I don't want to drive it home.
But it does confirm, like, oh, that's
Yep,
my
that's
birthday.
me.
Yeah.
That's me. And then admitted. So this was in the admission papers for the Methodist Babies Home because
Okay.
it says admitted April 15th, 1965. So I was obviously in the hospital for 8 days.
For a second or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how common is it for parents to name their babies if they're being adopted?
I don't know the actual
Right.
statistics for that, but I think it's more common than not. At
Yeah.
least in their minds, they came up with a name. I didn't realize until years later when I finally, because I didn't get my original birth certificate in this.
Right.
I had to wait until 2007
Yeah.
to finally get that. And it was on my legal birth certificate. She had actually given me a name.
Look at that.
But there was no father listed on my legal birth certificate.
Okay.
And there is a father listed on these papers.
Right.
So this was a questionnaire that I think they transcribed from one that she'd filled out.
Okay.
All right. So her name was Lynette Ina Priest, and she was 21 years old. And she lived on Anzac Road
Okay.
in a place called Mount Macedon. Now,
Yeah.
here's the significance of Mount Macedon for
Okay.
me. I kind of got chills again when I saw that because so Mount Macedon is very close to this place in Victoria called Hanging Rock.
Okay.
And there was a movie in the 70s, I believe it was directed by Peter Weir and was kind of legendary, called Picnic at Hanging Rock. So I always had an affinity for that place, and I liked to go there. And that was like 5 minutes from where my mother grew up.
Wow.
So that blew my mind.
Oh my gosh, Julie, that's crazy. Yeah.
And it was about 40 minutes from where I grew up. So we were relatively
real close.
close by.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that was like, wow, I could
yeah,
have seen
did
her
you
at any time.
let yourself think about, oh, if you were that close, did you maybe run into each other?
Absolutely.
Of
I've
course,
always
yeah.
thought that. When
Right.
you're adopted,
Yeah.
you look at faces when you're out in public and go, oh, is that her? Could that be? Oh, am I related to you? And you also, here's the thing that I find interesting about adoption.
Yeah.
About closed adoption, and especially if you're in the same geographical area, there's a pretty good chance you might date your brother.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
I have 5 brothers,
Wow. Yeah.
2 and 3 on each side, and they're all within dating age
Right.
for me.
Did you ever, because when did you find out you were adopted?
Oh, immediately.
Okay.
Yeah, before I could even understand
Did
it.
you ever use that as a filter for guys you were dating? If they were adopted,
Never.
then you wouldn't date them. Okay.
No.
All right.
Nope.
Okay.
Didn't occur to me.
I think I would.
Yeah.
No comedians, no people, I'm adopted. Okay.
Right.
Good. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So that was my mother.
Okay.
Now it says father.
Yes.
Malcolm Campbell, 21 years of age as well. 58 Fellows Street, Q. Now, Q was a suburb of Melbourne on the eastern side of Melbourne. I am from the western side of Melbourne.
Right.
The western side of Melbourne, the western suburbs are kind of the lower class area.
Okay.
The not so refined, whereas Kew is where the fancy people live.
Okay.
And I thought,
Yeah.
ooh, I don't know why.
Right.
Actually, I probably didn't think that then because I didn't understand the difference of.
Sure.
I mean, I
Okay.
was in my 20s, but I hadn't been there. Anyway, so that was about 10, 15 miles from where I grew up.
Whoa.
So we're in the same city.
Yeah.
You know.
God, that's crazy.
Yep. So occupations, she was a nurse's aide. He was a truck driver. Then it says introduced by Sister Jenkins. She's probably the nurse that brought me there.
Okay.
So here we have descriptions of the mother. Her hair was light brown. She had blue eyes. 4th year, meaning she finished her 4th year in high school.
Okay.
In Australia, you don't have to graduate high school to have a career. You can leave earlier and then she went to nursing school.
Right. It's a good system.
Makes sense. Slim, how tall do you think she was?
I'll tell you. How tall are you? 5'4"?
I am 5'3".
5'3". Okay. She was, yeah, so I would put it like 5'3". I put
She's
it.
5'9.5".
What? Julie.
That's what I said.
okay.
I have always been the smallest person, especially when I was a kid. I shot up
Yeah.
a little bit later, but I was so small when I was a kid. I was always the
5'9".
shortest kid. I had a teacher ask me if my mother had put a brick on my head at one point. Isn't that a nice thing to say to a 5th grader?
we have to listen.
Anyway, yeah. I was especially
away by
small. I
that,
was one
yeah.
of the bitty kids. So that was interesting. I said, how'd that happen? Okay, she had a pleasant manner. Her hobbies were swimming, sport, nope, sewing, reading, and then at the very end, it said singing.
Yeah.
That was my second aha
Now,
moment.
do your listeners know that you are a professional singer?
I do not think my listeners know that.
Should we tell them that you're a professional singer?
So I'm a professional singer.
Mm-hmm.
I have been pretty much my entire life.
Yeah.
And that was one thing, I felt that I was a singer before I even started singing.
Right.
It was something that just came naturally to me. I'm completely untrained, but I've always
Yeah.
just sang.
Your talent is insane. It's insane.
Thanks, Nay. So's yours. Anyway, so when I saw that, I got chills. I was like,
course.
oh, finally. The family that I was raised with, as I've mentioned before, we were very different. Not artistically minded people, not musical people.
Right.
I mean, they liked music, but did not participate in it
Yeah,
themselves.
they just didn't have your skills.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was always, where did that come? I didn't actually sing in public until I was 15. But then, and it was a nice surprise. And they were like, oh, you can sing.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I can.
Real well.
I can.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, and did it have the exact same details about your dad as well in this paper? Okay.
Yep. I'm going to get to them
what
right
was
now.
his?
These were the details that my mother presented because he was not in the picture,
Okay. All right.
obviously. So his details are he had auburn hair,
Great.
which explains why my mother always thought that I might have red hair because she was told I might have red hair.
Right.
And my biological mother told me that the nurses in the hospital kept calling me Penny. So I must have had some kind of reddish hair
Okay.
at that point. Okay, so he had auburn hair, brown eyes. I have green eyes. My mother has blue eyes.
Right.
He was 5'11", so he was not short.
Yeah.
So somebody explain that, please.
It is a curiosity.
It is
Yeah.
a curiosity. And his hobbies were cars and anything mechanical. And his personality, it says gay.
Oh, sure, happy. What a happy man. Yes.
It was a different time.
Of course. Yep.
So he obviously had a pretty jovial personality.
Yes.
It was described as gay. I thought it was fun.
That's adorable.
I guess the two
Is
of
he
them
gay
were
or
waiting
not?
to decide.
I can't commit. Yeah, that makes sense.
No, that wasn't my father. He wasn't my father.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. She was engaged. So when my mother was pregnant with me, she met another gentleman and got engaged while she was pregnant with me.
Wow.
How's that for...
Good.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
good story.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I had these things that I'd never had before
Yeah.
running around in my mind. It's mind-boggling.
Incredible.
So
Yeah.
I was in Oakland. I had to get back to the cruise ship. So, but before I did, I stopped at there were these things called payphones.
Yes. Yes, of course.
And you put money in them. Or I probably had a calling card because I was working on a cruise ship. And
Yeah.
that's how you made phone
I
calls.
remember them well.
Yep. I made an international phone call to the Copeland Street Family Center to talk to Mandy Bloom. I can't believe I still remember her name.
Wow.
Who was my caseworker.
Uh-huh.
And said, okay, got him.
Yeah.
What's the next step? I want to meet him. And she said, well, you can't do that on your own. We have to do it for you.
Okay.
So we'll start writing letters. We'll start doing a search, and we're going to look for you, and we'll let you know when we find something. And I had another 5 months on the cruise ship, so, there was no internet or anything.
God.
So
Yeah.
I had some time to kill. So that's what happened. And I had to wait till I got home to find out if they'd found anything out.
Oh, God, this story's good.
End of chapter.
I love it.
Yeah.
So now, for your listeners,
For my
if
listeners.
they have questions for you, they can go to the Facebook group.
Please go to the Facebook group or go to Twitter. By the way, I told you last night that our Twitter handle was CutOff Jeans 1. Scratch that.
New plan.
I changed it over the weekend because my husband bullied me. Not really. But we changed it. I changed it after taking a public poll, to CutOff Jeans Pod,
Great.
which,
Easy to find.
yes, I believe that's
So on Twitter, you're at CutOff Jeans
at
Pod.
CutOff Jeans Pod. We
Facebook,
are.
CutOff Jeans. Just put it in search bar.
They can find you.
Facebook,
CutOff Jeans, the CutOff Jeans podcast or CutOff Jeans
Great.
podcast.
And then if people want to read ahead in your blog, where can they go?
myelusivehistory.blogspot.com.
Yes.
And if they want to talk to you, Renee, where do they go?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Renee Colvert. And if you like dogs, I have a podcast called Can I Pet Your Dog?
Excellent.
Put that into iTunes. And where can Rich
And
you, where
Rich?
can we find you?
I'm on the Twitter as at Castle Songs because I'm a songwriter.
Sure.
Please
Yes.
follow me.
And he only writes songs about castles. So he's pretty specific. But, they're all good. Who knew there were that many kinds?
You got to find your niche.
Okay. And you can also reach me separately, apart from the Twitter page, at my own personal Twitter page, at Jules Jackson with 2 zeros, all one word. Find us on iTunes, and we're on iTunes. We're at most of the places where you can get your podcast now. But go to iTunes if you can. Subscribe. Please subscribe and download and listen to us. And if you like us, review us and say something nice.
That'd be nice. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. If you don't, say nothing at all. I prefer your
That's
silence.
a good rule. That's a good rule.
All right. So, you know what time it is?
Time for a catchphrase.
It's time for me to tell you that the truth is in your jeans.